Welcome to Whiskey Cast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1127 for September 21st, 2025. Coming up in a few minutes.
I say to people that, in the downturn, you should be producing at full tilt and maybe slow down when the market's sort of roaring its head off, because at some point it's going to come back a little bit. But no one gets it right in the industry because it's impossible to forecast 5, 10, 15 years down the road. You can't do that.
Whiskey Cast isn't the only one celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Islay's Kilchoman Distillery is also 20 years old, and founder Anthony Wills will be in the U.S. for a series of tastings on the West Coast this week. I caught up with him before he got on the plane to talk about the history and where Kilchoman sits in today's troubled marketplace. He also answered some of your questions, too. That's coming up on Whiskey Cast in depth. In the What I'm Tasting This Week department, we'll look at a couple of Pennsylvania rye collaborations, and on Behind the Label, we'll look at the link between whiskey makers and perfumers. The news is next on this week's Whiskey Cast.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory, this is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. President Trump's state visit to the UK this past week did not bring about a tariff reduction for Scotch whiskey. However, trade officials from the U.S. and the UK are scheduled to meet this week, and whiskey will almost certainly be on the agenda. The Scotch Whisky Association estimates the current 10% tariff is costing the industry around £20 million a month. U.S. officials have more important things on their minds, like whether they'll be working in a few days from now. Congress is at a stalemate on a spending plan for the next fiscal year that begins on October 1st, and we're looking at a partial government shutdown if no agreement is reached. Only essential employees would be allowed to work in a shutdown. For instance, the TTB would not be able to process label approval applications, but the agency's workers that process excise tax payments from distillers would likely be considered essential. In other news, here's another reason to fly through Dublin Airport. The Irish Independent reports the airport has now installed new security scanning technology that will allow for the limits on liquids to be relaxed. Passengers can now carry on up to 2 liters of liquids, including whiskey. There remain some caveats, though. Passengers flying to the U.S. go through a second security screening in Dublin, and it's not clear whether the relaxed limit on liquids will apply to U.S.-bound passengers. The new scanners will also be in place soon at Cork Airport. The Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame inducted its class of 2025 this week during a luncheon Tuesday at Log Still Distillery. Craig Beam became the first third-generation Hall of Famer, following in the footsteps of his father Parker and grandfather Earl Beam. The late Mary Dowling, longtime distiller and consultant Larry Ebersold, and retired Kentucky Senate Majority Leader Damon Thayer also joined the Hall of Fame. Chris Morris was already in the Hall of Fame, but Brown-Forman's Master Distiller Emeritus was named this year's recipient of the Parker Beam Lifetime Achievement Award. Jim Beam and the new Cadillac Formula One team announced a partnership this week that will see Jim Beam become the official spirits partner of Cadillac Formula One. The ties between the two brands go back some 90 years to when Colonel Jim Beam carried his jug yeast home in a mason jar in a Cadillac every night. Lots of new whiskeys to talk about this week. Suntory Global Spirits has released Toki Black, the first line extension for the Toki blended whiskey. This blend includes peated malt from Hakushu and will sell for around $40 a bottle. We should note that the House of Suntory is a sponsor of Whiskey Cast. Lafroig has released Elements 3.0, the third release in its Experimental Elements series. This year's edition experimented with peat smoking, with a kiln fire that burned longer and hotter than usual, adding flavors of roasted cocoa beans and dark chocolate. The cask strength release is available at $165 a bottle while supplies last. Diageo has released Buchanan's Green Seal, a new blend designed to celebrate Latin culture. It's made with an experimental Glenelgin single malt crafted using wine yeast instead of distiller's yeast. It'll sell for around $100 a bottle. Sazerac has released the first 1792 bourbon to be finished in cognac casks. It's the standard 1792 mash bill and maturation, but gets the final 6 months in cognac casks. It's the first permanent finished bourbon in the 1792 lineup. Hodling & Company is out with a new cognac cask-finished version of its Hirsch bourbon. It uses casks that previously held 30-year-old Hein cognac. Just 3,900 bottles will be available at a recommended retail price of $180 each. Brothers Bond has a new bourbon made using grains grown through regenerative agriculture, which is designed to be environmentally friendly. It's a 4-year-old bourbon that will sell for around $60 a bottle. Heaven Hill is debuting a new Elijah Craig barrel-proof rye. It's a 12-year-old rye that's bottled at 54% ABV and will be released 3 times a year, just like the Elijah Craig barrel-proof bourbons. It'll sell for around $75 a bottle. Bushmills is out with a new 26-year-old Irish single malt made using crystal malt. It's matured exclusively in ex-bourbon barrels and will sell for around $1,000 a bottle. Barrel Craft Spirits is celebrating Bourbon Heritage Month with a new 12-year-old bourbon finished in French oak. It'll go on sale Tuesday through the Barrel website at $159.99 a bottle and will be available at retailers next month. It's not winter yet, but Douglas Lang & Company is already releasing its winter editions of Scallywag and Big Pete. The Big Pete Isla blended malt is finished in Madeira wine casks, while the Scallywag Speyside blended malt is finished in ice wine casks. It'll sell for 60 pounds a bottle, while the Big Pete winter edition will go for 65 pounds. And Ardbeg is out with a limited edition release to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Ardbeg Committee. Vintage Y2K 24 years old was distilled in 2000 and is finished in Amontillado sherry casks. It's bottled at 46% ABV and is priced at £679.95. Finally, the Balvenie has released the second edition of its Balvenie 50 collection. Maltmaster Kelsey McKechnie combined a European oak refill butt filled in 1973 with an American oak hogshead from the same year. Only 97 bottles will be available at $55,000 each. And from the HR department, Gordon & MacPhail has taken the interim title off of CEO Mark Geary's title. The former Edrington executive has been leading the company since July, following the departure of former CEO Philip White back in May. And longtime International Beverage UK Managing Director Malcolm Leask is leaving the company after more than 30 years. It's part of a management shakeup that will see the company's Scotland-based leadership team reporting to executives at corporate headquarters in Bangkok. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. You know, whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Let's open up the calendar and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. Our good friend Lou Bryson has a book signing and tasting Tuesday night at Dad's Hat Distillery in Bristol, Pennsylvania for his new book, American Whiskey Masterclass. And Lou follows that up the next night with an appearance at Stolen Wolf Distillery in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. There will be an American Single Malt Symposium in Los Angeles at Hatchet Hall's Old Man Bar Wednesday with the master distillers from St. George Distillery, Whiskey Del Bach, New Riff, and Minden Mill. The Twisted Tail in Philadelphia hosts its annual Whiskey Bonanza on Thursday night. Whiskey Live Paris is this coming weekend. Whiskies of the World is in San Francisco on Friday night and in San Jose next Sunday. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Japanese whiskey began with Shinjiro Tori's vision to reflect the true nature and spirit of Japan. The House of Suntory was founded on these principles, guided by generations of craftsmanship that have transformed time, nature, and precision into something greater than the sum of its parts. Pure waters from the mountains of Hakushu, Mizunara oak shaped by decades of patience, a blending philosophy rooted in harmony. These aren't just techniques, they're a way of thinking, a quiet pursuit of balance and depth. From the layered complexity of Yamazaki to the crisp vibrancy of Hakushu and the elegant artistry of Hibiki, every whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from and the hands that shape it. House of Suntory. This is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
WhiskyCast In Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Kilchoman Distillery is marking its 20th anniversary this year, and founder Anthony Wills will be leading a series of tastings on the U.S. West Coast this week to mark the occasion. I talked with him on a Zoom call shortly before he left for the U.S. Did you think 20 years ago that you'd be at this stage 20 years later?
Absolutely not. I don't think really. I mean, I started off with a small distillery, 100,000 litres, and see where we went from there. And if people were interested in buying our single malt for the second or third or fourth time, and fortunately for us, the market was very receptive, and we've gone from there.
How have things changed over the years?
Well, I think when I was looking to build a distillery in 2001, which was when I first started the project, people thought I was completely mad to build a new distillery because there hadn't been many. Well, there have been very few. Arran was the last new distillery in Scotland in 95. And before that, you're talking about the 70s and 60s. And those distilleries built then were for big distilleries for the blend market. So to build a new dedicated single malt distillery was thought as completely bonkers in those days. And raising the money was even more challenging.
You managed to pull together a good investor group, though. They didn't sell you out the way Brookladdy's investors did.
No, we kept the investor group, fortunately very small, private investors who were happy to go for the long term and had the same goals as I did myself, which was to build something as a legacy moving forward and enjoy what you're doing rather than getting it to a certain stage and selling out to the highest bidder.
What are you doing to celebrate the 20th anniversary? I know you've got a 14-year-old sherry malt, right?
Well, we've done a selection of 4 different single malts, 5 casks in each bottling, from an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and 2 14-year-olds. The 18-year-old is all bourbon, and the 2 15-year-olds, one's 100% Islay sherry cask matured, and the other is a full maturation Oloroso sherry from our commercial malt. And then we've got a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old. I'm just going to go and check. Yeah. It's 18, 15, and 2 14-year-olds. And they're all matured in either ex-bourbon or ex-sherry casks. And they've been very well received, but very limited, obviously. Those were released earlier this year to celebrate our 20th anniversary, and we've been doing tours to various markets to introduce them and talk about them.
And you're doing one in the U.S. starting this coming week, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm coming to the U.S. This weekend and starting off in Colorado and moving west from there, and then down to San Francisco for the World of Whiskey show in the end of the week.
I want to bring up a couple of people from the past and to talk about their contributions. First of all, we can't talk about Kilchoman without talking about Jim Swan.
No, I mean, Jim Swan's involvement in Kilchoman is well documented. Without his input and his support, we wouldn't have got where we are now. He had a big impact on the design of the stills and producing a light fruity spirit, which is really what I said to Jim back in 2003, that I wanted to produce a spirit, Islay style, but that's something that we could release at a relatively young age. And that was a challenge to him, and he rose to the challenge, and we released our first single malt at 3 years of age, and it was very well received, and that's where we've gone from there. So, I would never underestimate his impact on where Kilchoman is now, and it's a shame that he's not with us to share the legacy he created.
Another blast from the past would be the late, great John McClellan, who you hired away from Bunnahabhain to be distillery manager.
Yeah, I mean, again, John had, 22 years of experience as manager at Bunnahabhain. And I was hugely delighted that he was prepared to give up his very safe and secure job at Bunnahabhain and come and join me at Kilchoman. And in his short time he was with us, he had a massive impact. He was here when we launched the 100% Islay range from our own barley right the way through to bottling it here on site. And he was very involved in the naming of our core expression, Macchia Bay, which is now, our biggest selling single malt.
How are you coping with the tariffs in the U.S.?
Well, a lot of people ask me, is that a big challenge? I think it was a bigger challenge when it was 25% in 2019, and now they're 10%. And yes, it's bound to have an impact. The USA is the biggest Scotch whisky export market, and is it affecting us as much as the big guys? Probably not, because we're quite a small player. And in fact, since we had a poor year in 2024 in the US, and we're having a better year this year. But, we're sharing the tariff at the moment with our importer, Impex Beverages, and we'll see how that goes. There's been lots of rumors circulating that President Trump is over here to do a deal for Scotch whisky, but we'll have to wait and see if that is true or not.
I remember you also absorbed the cost of the tariffs, the 25% tariffs with Impex back in 2019 as well.
Yeah, we did, and we thought that was the right thing to do at the time. 25% is a massive increase in price on the shelf. So we did. We shared that with our importer, and I think that helped some loyal customers understand that, we were doing our bit to keep the price on the shelf at a sensible level.
I put out a call on our app for questions from some of our listeners, and we got a few responses, and I'll throw them at you here. B. Skinner writes, with the slowdown in the global market for Scotch and whiskey in general, what does the future look like for the industry? Will there be a price rationalization to sustain growth, or are we looking at another whiskey lock similar to the early 80s?
Well, I think it's too early to say about the whiskey lock, but I mean, I think everybody knows that single malt distilleries in Scotland have been producing at a ridiculous rate over the last 10 years, 15 years, and it's hit the buffers this year where everyone's starting to panic a bit about their stock levels and are starting to reduce in quite big quantities. Look, I think overall, well, I'm going to honestly say to you at the moment that we're not sure when we're going to come out of this, because there's no real signs of green shoots in any market around the world. We've just had our 20th anniversary party here at the distillery, and we had 35 of our distributors from around the world, and they all say the same thing. Conditions are challenging. Economic conditions are challenging, and sales are struggling of premium single malt, and we've seen it. A slowdown in anything over £100 a bottle, and our core expressions are selling better. I mean, that goes without saying, because people's disposable income isn't there that it used to be. And yes, the bigger guys are discounting heavily to keep market share. We can't play that game, so we sit tight and wait for the market to turn around. And we have ideas of what we're to keep going in the right direction, and we're okay, and we're doing that. But yes, I don't think that anybody in the Scotch whisky industry would say that things are easy at the moment, and there's plenty of press speculation about redundancies and reduction in production at quite a massive level throughout the Scotch whisky distilleries, and we'll see where it goes. But at the moment, the economies around the world are in a bit of a pickle, and there's no certainty and serious intentions of growth in various markets. So we'll have to wait and see, and we'll sit tight and carry on doing what we're doing, and hopefully come out the other end.
Are you cutting back on production at all?
Well, we've been going full tilt this year, maximum production level at 650,000 litres. I think people know what I say to people that, in the downturn, you should be producing at full tilt and maybe slow down when the market's sort of roaring its head off, because at some point it's going to come back a little bit. But no one gets it right in the industry because it's impossible to forecast 5, 10, 15 years down the road. You can't do that. So we have been, and we'll have to consider what we do next year. We're just talking about that now and seeing what we do. But, at the moment, we're happy with the production levels we're doing, and sales have come back a bit, volume sales, and we're just keep an eye on that. But it's quite handy to be producing the levels we are, so when the market turns, we'll have plenty of whiskey to share with everyone around the world.
Doc Martin asks, any thought to age-stated core releases, or at least for the 100% Islay whiskies?
Well, we are now on the 100% Islay. We are stating the age on them, and on our Lochgorn, which is a limited release every year. We do that every year. It's now got an age statement, and it's a 10-year-old this year, and the 100% Islay is a 9-year-old. We're not ready to put core age statements on our core expressions. We haven't got the stock profile yet, and we'll wait to see as we build up the stock when we do that, or if we do that. We understand the importance of age statements, but at the moment we're continuing what we do, and we're talking more about the age of all the releases that we put out.
So you're still building up stock even after 20 years?
Well, if you consider that when we started, we produced 50,000 litres. In our first full year of production, we only filled 7 casks in 2005. So 2006, we produced 50,000 litres. And then they stepped up 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 year on year after that. But don't forget, we started selling at 3 years of age, and we then sold every year after that. So we were playing catch up for a number of years, and we were playing catch up until 2022, because we were diving into stock that we probably wouldn't have done, but we needed to do because the demand was there. So in a way, the slowdown in sales has been a good thing for us, because it's allowed us to replenish stocks, and we're producing at a higher level. So we feel confident that when the market turns, we will have plenty of stock available to go into the market and hopefully make an impact.
Have you had any offers to buy the distillery recently?
Not recently, but in the past, few people sort of sniffed about. But look, we're not for sale. We're not for sale, and I have my sons in the business, and that was never the intention. But they came in at the time we were needing more help, and they were involved right at the beginning when they were school in university as we built the distillery. So they had a big impact. They understood the challenges we had in those early days, and they're making a big contribution. So no, not really. We're enjoying what we're doing now, and getting to where we are now has taken a lot of hard work and commitment from a small team, and it's a no. I mean, the answer is no. We have no intentions of selling the business.
A cheeky question from Rick at the Whiskey Zone. How do you keep the Islay birds from eating your local farm-grown barley?
I wish someone could tell us how to do that, and we'd employ them, because it's a big struggle, because there's more and more um, birds that winter and summer here, resident geese that don't go away up to Greenland in the spring, and yeah, it's a big challenge for us, and we'll never get away from that, because at the moment the numbers are going up, and there's no directive from the government to deal with it.
Get a dog.
You need more than one dog. You need 150 of the damn things to keep everything off here. Yeah.
As a farm distillery, how do you balance tradition with innovation in your production? That's a question from Ayazturk.
Well, I think we balance that pretty well. I think in Scotland there are a few farm distilleries now. Obviously, I think that was our unique selling point when we set it up in 2005, and has resonated with consumers around the world, that we actually do the whole production process on site. Yes, it's only 20% of what we do, but I think people enjoy seeing the whole production process on a working farm, because we have sheep and we have cows. And innovation, well, we innovate through our cask maturation policy, where we have ex-bourbon and ex-sherry, which represents 90% of our maturation program. And then 10% we fill into, and we fill spirit into fortified wine casks, anything from rum and mezcal, tequila, Armagnac, Cognac, Calvados, because, that's the innovation we see as something that we can show how different maturation is in different cask types. And it's been a lot of fun doing, and we put releases out, full maturation rather than finishes. I think, finishes, as everybody knows, it's been done in the industry for a number of years very well by the likes of Balvenie and Glenmorangie. And so we wanted to do something different. And fortunately, our spirit character lends itself to filling into other fortified wine casks. But everyone has to realize that there's a very good reason why we use ex-bourbon and ex-sherry in the industry over here, is because they work so beautifully well, whereas fortified wines can be different from batch to batch. So that's the reason we don't find a cask type that we think, oh, Christ, that worked really well. Let's go and use those more. So that's the innovation. But we also use different yeast varieties in production, different cut points occasionally, just to showcase what goes on in the still house, and how you can change the character of your spirit by using different yeast varieties and different barley varieties in the field, which is where I sit in terms of the barley variety does have an impact on the character of your spirit.
A question from Tyrone Cote. Looking back, what things have gone better than expected since you started the distillery? And conversely, what things have not worked out as planned?
Well, answering the last part of that question, it's easy. We never raised enough money. We ran out of money on a constant basis for the first 4 years, until my small lot of shareholders were convinced to put more and more money in for those first 3 or 4 years to get us where we are now. So that was the biggest challenge that we had as a new distillery, is actually the financing of it. And then when my group of small investors came in, that made all the difference. And I'm hugely grateful to their support and financing the business. And what's gone well, I think that I never imagined that Kilchoman would be in this position. Now we are in that. When we started, I was looking to start a small little distillery, sell everything as single malt at a slightly premium price. And luckily, the timing was when whiskey consumers around the world had a thirst for new brands, and non-aged was obviously the time I started it. Everyone was looking at non-aged. They were where others had done it. And Islay, I think, has been our biggest bonus starting the distillery here, because of Islay's reputation around the world for some fantastic single malt.
Has the distillery scene on Islay outpaced what the island can support? You're up to, I think, 10 distilleries now, with 2 or 3 more under construction.
2 more under construction, and another 2 maybe in the planning stages, but put on hold. Look, I think we can have a few more distilleries here, but the infrastructure needs to be in place before these distilleries come on tap and start producing, and that's not the case. So we struggle with the infrastructure, ferries, housing, nil unemployment. So it's a challenge running a business on this island at the moment because of the success of the distilleries on this island that have, tourism is a massive part of the economy here. A few more distilleries, that's fine, but no problem. I don't have a problem with that. But it's a small island with only 3,000 people, and not enough housing. So it's a struggle to run a distillery at the moment and get people to come and work here because you're either taking people from other distilleries, pinching them from other distilleries, or you have to build houses and bring them from the mainland to live and work. So let's see. We've got Port and Trewin and Lagan Bay distilleries, which are near to ending construction, and I understand Lagan Bay will be starting in the new year, and Port and Trewin won't be far behind that in terms of production. We've seen it. Even when Port Ellen started, 3 of my staff decided to go and work for Port Ellen Distillery out of 6. So that didn't go down too well with me. It's one of the challenges we have on the island is staffing our distilleries. So more distilleries will create a few issues in terms of, as long as they know the issues around employing staff, because there isn't you can't just take them from anywhere. You're taking them from other distilleries mainly, or bringing them from the mainland.
Is it still fun?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I would say the last 15 years have been good fun, but the first 5 years were challenging. So, yeah, it's been good. I think the last 3 years have been more challenging just because of the economic situation around the world and the way things are panning out. But overall, I would say I'm massively proud of what we've achieved and where we've come. And now it's about building for the future.
Anthony Wills' U.S. tour starts Monday night in Denver at the Burns Pub, and there will be tour stops in Reno, Nevada, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, and San Jose. We've posted a link for more details in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. That's WhiskyCast in Depth, brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
Let's start the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the latest release from Milam & Green. Provisions is an 80-proof bourbon that was crafted to be a good sipping bourbon, and that's exactly what it is. The nose has touches of honeycomb, toasted oak, soft spices, and a hint of molasses. The taste is thick, chewy, and peppery with dried fruits, brown sugar, and toasted oak. The finish is long and peppery, and this whiskey does not drink like an 80-proof bourbon. I'm scoring the Milam & Green Provisions Bourbon a 93. Now let's look at a couple of Pennsylvania ryes that are collaborations between the state's distillers. Liberty Pole Spirits in Washington and Dad's Hat Distillery in Bristol are about as far apart as you can go in Pennsylvania, but they're on the same page whiskey-wise. They've joined forces to produce a straight rye whiskey bottled at 59.8% ABV. The nose has touches of baking spices, a hint of dill, molasses, honey, and oak. The taste is thick and spicy with notes of black pepper, cinnamon, and allspice that fade slowly to reveal molasses cookies, honey, and brown sugar. The finish is long, astringent, and spicy, and I'm scoring it a 92. And Stolen Wolf Distillery teamed up with the historic West Overton Farm Distillery to produce the Keystone Rye Collection whiskey that, like the Liberty Pole and Dad's Hat collaboration, blends their two ryes together. It's bottled at 54% ABV, and the nose has baking spices, molasses, brown sugar, honey, and hints of garden herbs. The taste is smooth and spicy with a nice balance between cinnamon, black pepper, and allspice notes, and honey, brown sugar, and molasses, while the finish is long with a lingering touch of cinnamon. I'm scoring it a 91, and I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of more than 3,900 whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey? That's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025. Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the inbox and see what people are talking about in our community segment. Lots of travel details this week. Chris Tatsenko and Lilith Morgan have been traveling around Scotland and Ireland, and Chris posted this in the app this week. So we visited Bushmills yesterday and had the opportunity to say hi to Alex Thomas, the master blender, while we were there. Alex was kind enough to pour us a dram of the 25-year, which was fantastic. I took away a 21-year tot to take home. We need to get Alex on the show sometime soon. Kareem Hassan has been visiting Berlin and posted this in the app. We found a fantastic whiskey bar in Berlin while on holiday. Amazing selection, great prices, and terrific service. It's called the Offside Whiskey Bar, a must if you are ever over there. Thanks for the recommendation, Kareem. And Scott Rogers wrapped up his series of posts from Scotland with this dispatch, ending our 2 weeks in Scotland with a wee tasting at an Edinburgh pub. Torvig Sound of Sleet before dinner and Ardbeg Corrie Vrecken for dessert. The Sky Dram was new to me, an excellent Highland style, and the Ardbeg is my personal favorite regular issue bottling from Islay. A lovely end to the vacation. Glad you had a good trip, Scott. And if you'd like to share highlights from your whiskey travels or anything else, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. What do whiskey and perfume have in common? Well, they both have an alcohol base and are crafted by master blenders who spend years studying their craft. Master whiskey blender Ari Sussman has been studying the work of perfumers lately, but as he told me the other day, the inspiration goes back to his teenage years.
When I was 13 years old, I had a subscription to Maxim magazine, and whenever it would show up in the mailbox, you could smell it from down the street because it would have these pieces of paper that you would open up and smell. And I thought that's really interesting. years later, I found these magazines in a box, and like I could remember all of these aromas. They like were drilled into my memory somehow. So I became very interested in it. And later, actually, when I was doing some work in France, in Montpellier, I stumbled into a very old perfume house where they were making custom perfumes for people, and I spent a couple days there watching them build these blends. Later, when I became a whiskey blender, I remembered how they were building these blends and look back at old perfumery manuals, and there's all sorts of techniques for building consistency or building complexity, or allowing olfactory characteristics to kind of bounce off each other, either with dissonance or with harmony. And it struck me that perfume makers were doing very similar things to whiskey blenders, and that by studying perfume makers, we might be able to find new ways of making whiskey, but also find new ways of augmenting whiskey using maybe some of the ingredients that go into perfume.
Ari Sussman's latest creation is the Whiskey Gypsy Legacy that will be released later this month. I had the chance to taste it at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and if you put a little dab behind your ears, it works just like cologne with a nice bourbony aroma, but it's better off being drunk. If there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of Whiskey Cast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and a complete archive of past episodes that goes all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us, download the free Whiskey Cast community app from your app store, or find us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskeyCast, and the email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory. This is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12-year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Built on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-year-old.
Whiskey Cast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2025, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.